Nicknamed Deedles, she has become one of jazz music's reigning queens. Blinded at birth, she went on to develop her musical talents to the point that by age 10, she was already performing shows. With her distinctive piano playing and rich voice, she's recorded over 20 albums and has headlined at Carnegie Hall and the White House and has collaborated with such musical greats as Quincy Jones, B.B. King, Dizzy Gillespie, Ray Charles, and Stevie Wonder. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on Interviews, our conversation with multi-Grammy Award-winning artist Diane Schuur. Does any of the joy leave music for you when it became a business?
No, Ernie, to be honest with you, no. The joy hasn't left. It's just a part of what, some people would call the game. Yeah. And after so many years of being a professional, I just kind of learned to accept pretty much the different elements of show business, and that's just one of the elements. And I'm just loving living in it.
Yeah, you've had a wonderful career and the opportunity to live in it, but it's something you always wanted to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was reflecting that on the 4th of October of 1996, I did a broadcast with Elmo for PBS on Sesame Street. And that was, 16 years ago now.
Time flies.
I know. I know. So it was very exciting at the time to do, and I went to my website and looked at it. It was really kind of neat.
Talking about your website, I hear you are all wrapped up in the electronic media world.
Yes. I've been into computers, it'll be 12 years next April, and I really love it. I have a desktop at home, and then I carry a laptop everywhere, and I'm able to watch what they call Sling Player, or I call it Slinger.
Slingbox.
Yeah, I call it Slinger. And of course, I watch PBS, naturally.
And for people who don't know what Slingbox is, it connects you back to your home television so you can watch whatever would be in your own home.
That is correct. It's a trip because, like if you're in the Central Time Zone, you can watch anything that's, since I live in California, of course, it's Pacific Time. So it's really a lot of fun, and I download books. And
It is strange how computers have changed our world and brought everything so much closer and intimate.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, music and everything else.
A few years back, there was a lot of controversy over Napster and the file sharing and all that.
Oh,
What's
I
your
know.
take on all of that?
Well, it's part of the process, Aaron. It's just part of the process, and of course, now people have to pay for anything that they get. It's like I say, it was just like the Wild West. At first, as far as the computer world, it's very natural. YouTube, there's lots of hits. As far as people going to see the things that I've done, and some of them might be bootleg, but hey. Whatever works.
Recently there was a big sensation on a TV talent show about a young girl getting up and singing. And it came all back to me when I was listening to one of your most recent albums. Yes. And in it, you have placed one of the songs you recorded when you were 10 years old.
Correct.
Explain a little behind that.
Well, as you know, the latest album, Some Other Time, is a tribute to my mother and her legacy that she gave me as far as love of jazz. And I thought that it would really be cool if we could incorporate one of the first song that I actually did. I auditioned at the Holiday Inn when I was 10 years old. It was a Saturday afternoon on January 4th. And And it was called September in the Rain. And of course, back then I was really trying to emulate Dinah Washington, you know, and her sound and everything. Then when I did my first country record when I was 17 years old, the late Jimmy Wakely says, "Now, Diane, you got to get away from sounding so much like Dinah Washington." I thought, okay, who are the other people that I really love to emulate and you know, style and so on? And one of them was Patti Page. And so I thought, okay, let's see if this works. And so I did the tune kind of like Patti and with a little bit of a twist. So, you know, the curly cues in different places and bending the notes and so on. So, yeah, it's, but the September in the Rain song was a wonderful, I'm glad that we could incorporate it. And of course, then followed Danny Boy, because Mama loved that song. And of course, it took a few years for me to do it, but I was able to do that. And because Mom died when I was 13, and she was only 31, so.
How does that affect a child at that age, do you think?
Children, a lot of times, don't know how to, or have, through no fault of the parents, been given the skills to cope as well. I remember I cried a little bit, but I was dry-eyed at the funeral, and it hasn't been up until recent years that I really, really felt the loss of my mother.
Yeah.
Because, you know, mothers represent a bonding, which is so interesting. When I was born, I was placed in an incubator shortly after my birth because I was born 2 months premature. And they felt that was the only way that my life could be saved. But in doing so, I lost that bonding with my mom. Mm-hmm. And for babies, it's so important. In fact, they have a practice with that, you know, making sure that kids can bond with their parents at birth. And, you know, so it's just been in recent years that I've really learned, you know, that holding hands with a good friend or whatever is okay, and you know, and not to be so startled if somebody comes up to me and puts their hand on my shoulder or whatever, because I used to get really startled. I still do sometimes, especially like if I'm on an airplane and I'm under headphones and I'm really wrapped up in what's going on in there. So it's just, oh, you know, so it really is kind of like a snapping to, you know, coming back. And but anyway, that's, you know, it's life experience is a trip, I'm telling you.
When you talk about being 10 years old and recording the song, I think a lot of people worry, what was your childhood like? Was she being pranced out there and paraded out there? This was something you loved, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and I loved going out there and performing. I know that John Bradshaw, who did a lot of stuff for PBS, mm-hmm. and after I got sober, I have almost 21 years of sobriety actually. Talked about what was it? You know, about the inner child and so on. It's just really just very, very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was leading to something, and I'm trying to remember exactly.
We're talking about your joy as a child.
Yeah, and my joy as a child. And I think that's one of the things that he talked about in the workshops. You know, there was the wounded child and so on, but then there's the wonder child. And that's, I think, in going out there, but I learned about the dynamics of the family system. That's what I was trying to get to, and what John Bradshaw talked about is people that were the star of the family. And I guess I was the star of the family in that dynamic, although I still was able to really spread that childlike kind of joy. I think that's why adults would start to cry,
yeah.
And, you know, because that's what joy does with people. It often brings tears. Joy, it's like what Khalil Gibran says in the book, The Prophet, that joy and sorrow are inseparable. And I think there's really something to be said for that.
When you talked earlier about Diana Washington and your affinity toward her, and the questions about emulating an artist, at what point do you realize you have your own voice and you can separate from those that have influenced you?
When I really started getting into jazz, that's when, I mean, I've always been in jazz, but I'm not exactly sure, Ernie, exactly when it happened. It's just one of those processes that just builds and builds over time. And a lot of people say, just from hearing one note that I do, oh yeah, that's Diane Schuur, that's Deedles or Deeds. And there's, you know, with a lot of artists, there's just no mistaking that first note, for sure.
Okay, you mentioned Deedles. I need to know, where did that nickname come from?
Well, my mom, when she was alive, nicknamed me Deedle Babe. And so as a result, Deedles came out of Deedle Babe. And yet within the name Deedles, there's so many nicknames, even within the nickname Deedles. It's, you know, Deeds, Deedly Weedly, Deedly Doo. My manager calls me Deedle Baber. Hello, Deedle Baber.
When does the
You'll probably kill me for saying that, but anyway.
When does the transformation come that you can use words like cat and cool baby and all that jazz lingo? When does that become part of one's vernacular?
Well, I remember I had and still have a very, very dear friend who got me really engrossed in people like Charlie Parker, Fats Navarro, you know, all sorts of different people. And I guess it just, for a person like me, it's always been a part of the vernacular because I've always been exposed to it. It's just kind of really what people would say is kind of like a hip kind of language all of its own. And in jazz, even though in the United States it's not recognized in a lot of circles as much as it is outside of the United States, like in Asia, you know, Europe and Japan and so on, it still touches everything. Commercials, you know what I mean? It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. And in many commercials there was kind of like a disco thing that they put to Dinah Washington's "Is You Is" or "Is You Ain't My Baby."
Right.
You remember that? Yeah. It's just amazing how much jazz has become part of our culture, and yet there's so many people that wouldn't even recognize that.
Right.
You dig?
Yeah.
So.
Do you find that outside of the U.S. there's a different reception to the style music you do than within this country?
Yes. There's a saying that a prophet is never really known in his own country. And, you know, that's kind of a figurative way to state it, but for some reason, jazz is embraced a lot more in other countries for whatever reason. And but you never know. Maybe the cycle will change.
Yeah. There was a time in your career where people questioned your commitment to jazz. They felt there was quite a bit of pop influence and all of that.
Well, they're going to be questioning it again.
I hear what's coming, yeah.
Oh, you heard, hey?
You're going country.
Yeah, you heard. Oh my God! How did you hear about?
Well, we check into people before we sit down with them. Country. Huh?
Oh, I bet Jack White or someone told. Okay. Yes, it's exciting, and you know I can thank Ray Charles for that.
Really?
Yeah, because he did it. He did the same thing. In the late 60s, early 70s, he had a country album and you know, out, and it went really, really good. What I'm hoping that my concept of this is taken seriously is Daddy really loved country music, still loves country music, and my mom was into jazz. And so there's a wonderful tune. It's a gospel tune. In fact, getting back to Mr. Bradshaw again, they use this theme for a lot of the inner child work, going home. And that's what I'm hoping to kind of have this album be embraced about. Yeah, the song Going Home. You've heard the song, right? Yeah, so... And you know, and there's going to be other material on there too, and I'm really excited about it.
Are you at a point in your career where you don't get nervous about doing that, that you have enough confidence in your own talent and skill that you can just move forward?
Yes.
How does that build?
Through time, through experience of life. I think that I, now in my going into my 57th year of existence, I think I'm really ready to encapsulate emotionally a lot of what the brand of country music that we're going to be getting into. I think I'm ready.
Is this going to upset the jazz purists?
You know what? Ricky Nelson sang, "Can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself."
Yeah.
And if it upsets them, well, that's just, you know, it's tough. It's just tough. It's like, I love jazz, but I need to be exposed in a bigger market. And you were talking about, you know, money or commercialism. Does it take the joy out of it? No, it doesn't take the joy out of it at all. In fact, you know, it can add to it after a while.
In addition to the commercial success and the career and all that, I hear you're on a spiritual path now that's opening up for you.
Yes.
What led to that?
I think when a person is presented with challenges, I'm not wearing mascara, so if a couple of teardrops fall, it's not going to matter. I think for myself that it's forced me on some levels to seek the spiritual out. And I'm glad that I have. It's on some levels my faith has been tested in a way that I never even dreamed possible. But at the same time, out of all of the challenges and stuff, there's growth.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening for me. My wonderful husband that I've been married to for almost 15 years has Parkinson's disease, and it's really a challenge. But we love each other enough that no matter what, we stand tall and together, whatever needs to be faced. And that's the true grit of being married and being with somebody that you love a lot.
What are you finding, though, on this path that's helping you through this? What are the truths that you're discovering?
That love is all-inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that love is all-inclusive and will carry me through. And I thank God that, first and foremost, above all, I thank God for my sobriety, because it's really helping me, especially through times that can be a little bit challenging. But there's always, the sunbeam and the rainbow within that sunbeam. And I thank God. I wouldn't trade, you know what I mean? I wouldn't trade for anything. I would live my life, every step of the way, I would live my life exactly the way that I'm living it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because Stevie Wonder said it so beautifully, you brought the joy inside my tears. And that kind of like says it all.
You've mentioned your sobriety a couple of times, and I think we all in today's society have friends that you see that are enjoying the drink a little too far and stuff.
Yeah.
For you, how did you know when it was time to stop? What was the final thing that said, I need to move on?
I think it was my last suicide attempt, and I'd tried that at least once before, and there was that jumping off place, and I knew that I was at a crossroad, and I knew that there's just a light that came on in my head. It was. I'll just never forget my brother-in-law who stood there, and I was about to jump out off the third-story balcony of the place where I lived, and he just stood there, and he didn't grab for me or anything like that. But then I kind of like put my arms around him, and I cried, but it was like a different kind of crying than I'd ever experienced before. And I knew that I had actually really, really, really hit bottom. And a friend of mine the next day asked me, Deedly Weedly, his name's David Freeman. He's no longer with us, but he asked me a very simple but profound question. Deedly Weedly, do you think you might be an alcoholic? And nobody had asked me that before. People would say, well, Deeds, you drink too much, and so on. But as far as having a question actually posed to me was so, it gave me time to pause and really think about it. And that's when the spiritual awakening, as it's called, really started to happen for me. And ever since then, it's been a quest of a spiritual path. And yes, through drugs and alcohol, I was on a quest for a spiritual path, and I thought that I'd found it, but it was extremely elusive. But yet at the same time, Ernie, I don't regret doing those things either, because it put me here. Mm-hmm. It put me here exactly where I'm meant to be right now at this moment. And my axiom is to live in the present, not belabor the future, and not stay too long in the past, but to just try to keep a real balance, a sense of balance. And that's what I'm endeavoring to do, and it feels really good. Even sometimes when it doesn't feel so pleasant, it's still to be able to feel the feelings. I think, when you and I were talking about the weight loss, I've dropped about 60 pounds in the past 2 years. It was 64, but got on the scale, and I guess I gained 5 pounds. But you can call that boob weight.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he's blushing over there. So I think I'm blushing a little myself.
I think you are a little bit too.
I think I still have a little bit of innocence in me, But it's such a trip, and it's such a process. And, to be able to feel the joy, that's what I like to try to exude in my singing, in my work.
I was going to say, is this in some way, and I don't mean to be stereotypic of country music, but it's kind of an uplifting, kind of fun feeling music. Is this kind of a feeling of where you are emotionally?
Yes, absolutely, no doubt, absolutely. I'm just so excited, and just, they say in astrological terms that things are lining up, and it feels like that for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After country, then what? Rap album? What do you got planned next?
I don't think so. Maybe what you and I were talking about, the spiritual path kind of album. Yeah. Not necessarily fixed in a denominational kind of thing, because there is a difference, for me, there's a difference between religion and spirituality. And I choose to be in the spirituality kind of a vein. And I'm just really, that's what I see, you know, possibly happening. I mean, like the path that I love so much is one of my favorite prayers is the St. Francis prayer, you know. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. You've heard that, I'm sure.
Yes, I have.
It's one of the most... It's interesting. Have you ever heard of Gregorian?
Oh, yeah.
Well, my manager, Jack White, and I, we do some of this stuff like the St. Francis prayer. We do it in Gregorian.
So maybe a chant album is coming?
I don't know. You never know. It's... yeah, I guess some people would call it chanting, but for me, it just gives me a real opportunity to get into that realm of spirit.
Well, whatever it leads you to, we're so happy it's brought you here today.
Well,
thank
me
you
too.
for all the music, and a
Thank
pleasure to talk with you.
And you too, Ernie.
Thank you.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you so much, and I will continue to watch PBS, I promise.
Diane Schuur.
To order a DVD of this or any episode of Interviews, please visit HoustonPBS.org.